Okay, I think we are live. So hello everybody. Everybody who joins, we will we're very excited to be here. I personally am. So I will give a couple of minutes to other people to join. So we'll probably start in 5 minutes past, if that's okay. I see there are a couple of people there. If you have any questions while we wait, please post them in the chat and we can take a look at them. Yeah, people saying hello. Yeah, emojis are very welcome. Yes, Joe. Yeah, sorry to keep you waiting. We'll give maybe 1 more minute and then we will kick off. Okay, I think let's start. So first of all, thanks again for joining us today and for everyone who will be listening to the recording. Today we're going to be talking about cost and great customer service and how to balance these two very often competing priorities. We have some amazing guest speakers today, super seasoned customer support leaders who supported thousands of customers in their career. So I'm very excited to welcome Alex and Sham. Thanks so much for joining. Before I hand over to them for introductions, I actually wanted to quickly run through what we're going to cover today. So first of all, we'll talk a bit about cost drivers, essentially what metrics to focus on and what contributes to the cost of running customer service. Secondly, reducing contact volume. So what are some of the hands-on initiatives that you can try? Thirdly, it's outsourcing. It's outsourcing. When and why to consider outsourcing and how that can help find the right balance. And finally, productivity of your team. So there are a lot of things that can go into this: internal processes, tools, empowering your team. So we'll talk about some of the things you could try. Okay, introductions. Let me introduce myself first. So my name is Luba Chudnovets. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Cordless. Cordless is a phone system with AI-driven conversation intelligence built specifically for support teams to understand how better to improve operations and what's going on your calls much better. Before starting Cordless, I was at Monzo Bank. I was head of scaling operations there, and I helped them support over 3 million customers at the time that I was leaving. So finding the right balance between cost and quality is something I spent a lot of time thinking about. So I'm excited to talk about this today. Okay, so I will hand over now to our fantastic speakers to introduce themselves. Sham, would you like to go first?
Hey everybody, thanks for joining. My name's Sham. I'm the founder of the CX Way. It's a customer service consultancy. However, most recently before that, head of customer service at Selfridges, the world's best department store for the last 7 years. And pre to that, another sort of 13 years in the industry, working in a call center or a contact center. I actually like calling contact centers. I enjoy it. So if you'd ever like to talk about it, give me a nudge. You'll find me on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Alexandre Morey. I am head of global operations for The Nest by Concentrix and Webhelp, which I've been working there for the past 16 years. I did my whole career path in the same company. I started as an advisor and built my way through operations mainly until today, where I'm leading all of the pre-sales and operations for startups and scale-ups that partners with us. So nice to have you guys around.
Great, thank you. So one final thing before we kick off. Please do ask questions in the chat. We will come back to them at the end of the webinar. I will make sure to leave some time at the end. So great, let's kick off. So when I was head of operations at Monzo, the way I thought about our team performance was very much in terms of customer satisfaction and cost. So how do we get to the great customer satisfaction? And we define it in a certain way, but we managed to do it at the lowest possible cost. So I guess the question to our speakers is, does this resonate with you in terms of how you think about customer service performance and performance of your team? And I guess, what are the core metrics that you always keep top of mind to make sure you're on top of that? Alex, do you want to start?
Yeah, for sure. Does resonate, of course, especially when working with startups and scale-ups. Their main concern is how is the change going to affect our customer satisfaction, our user loyalty, customer base, et cetera, So in terms of implementing something new for a client such as these, what I usually think about is a balance in between a seamless transition in between what's being done right now and what we're planning to do in the very short term, and quick as well, because when you're handling startups and scale ups, it's velocity, speed is key, and by actually having these seamless transition in the beginning, of course, the cost reduction is associated because not wasting extensive times with training staff, with maybe replacing staff in the beginning of the project, etc. I believe the first 3 months are key for this perception and this, and for you to kind of like stamp your values to the client in the beginning, and that you are super transparent from the beginning. Mistakes needs to be spotted from the beginning by our side and be transparent in order for us to give that first kind of like love at first sight image in the beginning of the relationship. And metrics, when it comes to metrics, of course, what I try to do is straight up go to CSAT and ESAT, so employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction, as the first basis on the first 3 months that I just mentioned, to see if the change has impacted loyalty and customer base, and employee satisfaction as well, because in the end of the day, not every project, not every client is for every advisor. So if changes need to be done in the beginning, they're best done in the beginning. So we find the best profile in order to keep the team motivated for the client that we are dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Sham, over to you.
Hey, so yeah, cost and quality, the two competing priorities. And the reality is that as you drive down cost, quality also in theory would follow that. You almost get what you pay for. So over the last sort of 20 years where I've worked across startup and then also more traditional organizations, everybody wants to do more for less. And in reality, I spend a lot of time talking to boards and saying to them, if you want to spend less, you will get less. And so it's been tricky. And over the years, some boards have understood that, and we found a way to reprioritize spend and get it into the right place. But another way of sort of looking at it is to figure out how can you creatively make some changes to your operating model so that you're not necessarily driving down your cost, you're driving down the volume of work that you're doing so that you can then still provide good quality. So the cost, let's say, per contact is still the same. However, if you drive down the overall contacts, then your bill comes down. So it's semantics and it's maths, but in the end, in order to deliver both the CSAT, the customer satisfaction that Alex was referring to, the ESAT, the employee satisfaction, I think that's how you achieve both things. And I guess if you made me pick just one metric, I'd pick FCR, which is first contact resolution. Of course, in silo on its own, you have to be careful, but that's usually a good indicator of a contact center, call center, customer service team. How are we doing? Are the problems that we get in solvable? Can we do them the first time we do them? If not, why not? If everything we're getting in, we're solving it first time, why are we getting it in? And so, you know, I'm always sort of playing around with FCR in another way where I call it fake contact resolution. So it's a different kind of FCR. It's the one where your score's really high and you pat yourself on the back, but it's fake because the customer has moved channels. So real quick example, Twitter. You take them off Twitter, you slide into the DMs, that social case will have first contact resolution on it, but now they're sitting in email or you're phoning them. So actually that's not first contact resolution, that's fake contact resolution. So if I had to pick one, I'd pick that one out. If I had to give you a call out, it would be careful. But ultimately, I would rather tinker with the engine and get the contact down rather than drive the cost down per contact.
Yeah, makes sense. Actually, I'd love to go right into it and talk about reduction of contact volume. So what are the, how do you go about doing that? What are some of the quick wins you could try, and what is, I don't know, some of the initiatives it's worth investing in over the long term?
Would you like me to carry on?
Yes, Sham, actually, that'd be great.
No worries. I'm going to sort of use e-commerce as a use case here, but if anybody else works in a different vertical industry and you'd like us to tailor the answer, please drop it in the chat and I'm happy to adapt. But if we use online retail as the example, most e-commerce websites, top 3 queries are around deliveries, returns, and website. They're the sort of top 3 things that you're going to hear about. So on returns, you know, there's this capability to book your own return or contact the call center and ask them to book a return. So I guess a way to reduce that contact is a level of self-service. Can you allow customers to book their own return? Is that journey seamless? And if it is, then you don't have to handle that inside your contact center. If you are handling it inside the contact center, how can you get underneath why? So it's not just simply a return. Is it because when they came to your website, they couldn't find their order to book the return? Is their postcode not being recognized? Is the value of the order, does it require a physical return? If it's a low value item, can it just be refunded? Is it worth bringing it back from a cost perspective? So this is taking your contact reasons, dissecting the top 3 or 4, and then saying, how else could I deal with this outside of my contact center? So self-serve would be an example of how to drive down your returns contact quickly, and then therefore you get less of that contact in.
Yeah, Alex.
I'm not in a specific vertical or a specific type of business itself, but I see from the projects that we manage within the Nest, customers or clients that are able to reduce that kind of like first level mass amount of volumes are the ones that do have a complete FAQ, and their website is kind of driving users to address the FAQ or any contact with the human team, and the navigation towards the FAQs and you know, all of the knowledge bases within the website as a first glance is good, is easy to find, good search engines. Obviously, when we're talking with startups, you know, sometimes that the knowledge base or template library is not really complete, is not, and this is something that we try to do even before we start anything with a new partner. You know, instead of starting next month, let's start in 2 months. So we take the first month to actually improve that side of the reduction of volumes aspect, and maybe we can just filter the harder things for the human team. But like usually when we do have, in fact, that template library and the knowledge base on point, we could then eventually transform this into a bot automated system where the template library and the KB becomes the first level support via bot. And our actual human team will become like a 1.5 or second level team, just handling the more complicated, like maybe financial things like refunds, like things that do need a verification or a fraud. And in the meantime, we have reduced obviously the cost because the staff is reduced, is a cost for a second level kind of dynamic. We also try for voice customers when we have a phone IVRs, like complex IVRs, that you could have voice messages acting as an information giver, which would eventually, I mean, that's lesser than in written channels, in my opinion, because people don't really like to talk to robots on the phone. They would like to talk to humans, but I have seen and helped develop more complex bots that it's more seamless and you actually get the information that you need. Mm-hmm. But all of this obviously requires investment, initial investment from the client, but it pays off if it's done right long term.
Yeah, from my experience, we focused on this a lot when I was back at Monzo, and for me, always the first step has been understanding your contacts really, really well. Like, what are the customers are actually writing to you about, and what is the top 5 questions? And so in banking, of course, they're very different.
Absolutely.
From commerce. But then once you actually know what contributes most, then you can try to figure out what can I do with it. And the way we used to think about it, which I found very helpful, is one is information type of requests, where actually all people are writing about is just to find something out. For instance, I don't know, FX fees, what are they like? What are those? And you don't really need a human to answer that, as long as you have a very easy to work with FAQ, or actually a chatbot suggesting an article if you ask that. But then, of course, the next level is, okay, you actually need a human to do something. And here, the question is, should we be investing in building a self-service? I don't know, things like changing your address, or asking for a refund is another example there. And this one, I guess, it very much depends on the volume, right? So, like, is it worth for us to invest time into this right now to make sure that people can find that solution? And then finally is, of course, product issues. Like, no, I don't know, I can't log in into the app or things like that. And okay, this is the ultimate failure when people can't log in or use your product. But it's, in my opinion, I think it's always been helpful to actually involve other stakeholders, where people in the company and across the product teams are really bought into customer service and do it occasionally as well. And in this case, it's much, much easier to actually make sure these issues are solved super quickly. I guess to carry on with the reduction of volume, what do you think about, I mean, FAQs are great, but not everyone likes using them, or same with self-service tools. How do you find the right balance between pushing people into these self-service tools and customer satisfaction and personal service? How do you think about it? Alex, do you want to go first this time?
It needs to, I just think it needs to be super user-friendly, because it is, nobody likes to be pushed around when it comes to customer support. Nobody likes to be trying to fetch information when they have a clear path for a number or a chat to talk to, and they feel like they're being pushed around. So in my opinion, it needs to be well thought, based on knowing your customers, knowing your customer base. So I think that will vary from vertical to vertical, if you're talking like banking or maybe e-commerce or delivery companies, etc. For example, if you're talking about delivery companies itself, they placed an order which they paid for, and they're probably waiting for this order to arrive. So I personally would go less self-service and more human tech, because you would need to provide the confidence that your delivery is going to be delivered, maybe with a little delay or something like this. But maybe if you're looking into other verticals, say, for example, more IT related, that you're requesting a software, that you're requesting like some service, the self-service idea is more implementable, because the expectations of the users or customers are that they are going to request, and a request is going to be pushed. People are going to work around the request until it's actually delivered. So I think you will need to analyze this service by service. I do think even in delivery service, you could have self-service like tracking orders and so forth. Where is my delivery order? So if this is something that is transparent to users or customers, it's a big A+. But understanding your customer base is key in order to push such services, I would believe.
Sham.
Yeah, it's a great start that Alex has made on that. So I think I'll just build on top of it. Alignment is key. So be aligned. Are you aligned with your business and its vision, mission, purpose? How would you want your customers to feel when they're interacting with your customer service team? Do you want them self-serve? Would you want them to do that if they came into your store, as an example? And so figure out where you want to go with it. How do you want them to feel when they interact with your website or your FAQ or systems? You could A/B test it. So you could, with some of your customers, force them down an FAQ route, and with others, give them contact options, and then look at the satisfaction across both if you wanted to get sciencey about it. Another way of doing it would be that if you know that certain channels for you have a higher contact resolution, so your live channels like live chat or phone typically would have a higher contact resolution than, let's say, email, for example. So could you put your live chat or your phone up the pecking order so that it's visible first before you find the email address, for example? So not necessarily hide it, but could you force customers down a route where they have options for help along the way? And again, the beauty of using a website to surface these options is that you could test all of those things. You could look at the conversion, you could see how customers interacted, where they clicked, and then also afterwards, if you're collecting satisfaction scores, then you can see whether they were happy or not. So be aligned with your brand, test it if you want some science and some data behind it, but ultimately make sure that you're looking at what data you do have and make a joined up decision. Take all three and figure it out. That's where I would go with it.
Yeah, for sure. I think understanding the satisfaction and sentiment by type of question is really important as well. In the example I did before about if it's an information request, it should be really easy to put in an FAQ. But actually, if you're, I don't know, you recently increased your fees and people are writing to you about it and they're very unhappy, maybe it's not a good idea to put it in the FAQ. Actually, you need to speak to them and make sure they're comfortable with it and so on. So yeah, so for sure, I think understanding sentiment and where you can add the most value by type of question is super important. Just want to say that at Cordless, we actually have automated sentiment of calls, so you can actually get this really easily without even asking customers, which sometimes obviously you can get skewed rates and not everyone replies to the question. So yeah, cool. Moving on to the next one, outsourcing. So in your view, what role does outsourcing have in regards to customer service reductions? Is it worth investing into doing that? Sham, do you want to start first?
Hey, so my answer might differ slightly to Alex's answer, but hopefully I don't wind him up on this webinar. So yeah, I think again, I'd go back and say to you, look at your business mission, vision, purpose. What is it that you're trying to push as a brand? And then figure out what's the operating model that you need. So very quickly, there's usually 3 ways to deal with customer service: do it yourself, in-house, outsource. For example, using an organization like where Alex works, or a bit of both, which you would call hybrid, where you use both teams. So look at what your business is doing, make sure you're aligned. And then once you're able to do that, then of course you can look at how the cost plays in. It's probably fair to say that typically doing it yourself is going to cost you a bit more. And that's usually because there's a building involved. You've got other costs of the employee and everything that goes into recruitment, training, and getting that person to a certain standard. By going outsource, usually the model is around the number of contacts and or the hours that they supply to you. And so that helps to get yourself a unit number where you can say what's the cost per contact. And therefore, because outsource has been doing this for a while, they can usually demonstrate a lower cost overall. And so I think what matches your business in terms of perhaps one or two watch outs on both sides. In terms of doing it yourself, you then have everything else that goes with having a workforce. So performance management, putting your arm around somebody's shoulder, the HR piece in there, the recruitment, retention, attraction, doing all of that. From the outsourcers side, they can really quickly pick that thing, that side of things up for you. The only risk I would, I guess, call out massively from an outsourcing perspective is brand immersion. And so if you imagine your contact center is based near to your business and is immersed and speaks to your CEO every day and is at the all hands and can touch and feel your product, perhaps an outsourcer who might not be based next to you would have less opportunity for brand immersion. And so again, back to the first question, is it aligned to the way your business works? So align your operating model. They both have pros, they both have cons.
Alex?
No, you didn't wind me up. It's fine. I totally agree with you, Sham. It needs to be case by case, and you make sure that your business is ready if you want to outsource or not. And some businesses are happy not. That's equally fine. And I just think, for example, customer support itself is mostly seen as a cost center, but doesn't necessarily needs to be that, because a high-performing customer support team ensures retention and increase of brand loyalty in the end of the day, So what is the challenge is to get there, to the high-skilled, but it's not impossible, right? So, but yeah, basically the cost reduction goes into reducing internal infrastructure, facilities, HR, IT costs. What we see a lot within startups is when you have their in-house customer support, is a bunch of people that are possibly not even hired for that, but everybody's doing a bit of everything. So imagine you have like product developers, but they are actually doing 30% customer support, because even though the volumes are at that point not too high, somebody still needs to, to answer these customers. So as a first cost reduction, as we see when you externalize, especially being a startup scale up, is the people that you have in-house that are hired to actually develop your product, brand, etc., what it is, they're not going to be doing that easy first level kind of thing. And we will be doing this for you as a first. So these internal people in-house can actually focus on the product, the brand, and everything else. Obviously, cost reduction has to do with geography, but not only. Just to give you an example of how we operate geography when it comes to partnering with startups, is we, Concentrix plus Webhelp, we have locations all over the world, and it could be super easy for me to pick a location just by cost, but I am not a salesman, I'm an operations man. So I need to ensure that the longevity of this partnership is as long as possible. So therefore, we have selected locations that are cost effective for potential clients, but these locations have already been pre-onboarded on how to operate for startups, which is much different than operating for huge sharks in the market that they have their processes super square. They already know what they're doing. It's 2 clicks of a button and this is the process and there's no discussion. So when we choose location, so the geography, of course, if you're talking about an European startup and you would offer something, for example, in, let's say, Madagascar for the French market, obviously it has a cost benefit, but it's not only that. We need to ensure that they are aligned with the French culture, with the French type of customers, and the pre-work done with these locations is essential for the success. So that's when cost reduction is justified. If you're looking just for cost reduction, but you're not looking into the impact that can have on your customers, then the strategy is wrong, in my opinion, as well. And the last one, I just have a quick note here. The multilingual ability is, imagine we're talking about a German company that they first penetrated the Spanish market for whatever reason, but slowly but surely they are penetrating their local market in Germany, right? So having multilingual companies means that one location can do it all, and maybe location is cheaper than Germany, and you would actually find German resources or German-speaking resources for lower costs if your business is a multilingual need business. So this is the aspects that I see here in cost reduction, if it makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, I guess you touched on some of that stuff already, but I guess there can be a lot of complexity in setting up outsourcing. Can you share some tips? What is the best way to go about it? Maybe when is the right time to do it? Alex, carry on.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, first, I think identifying the task at hand, because, some companies, I'll give you an example. If you are looking for a high skilled profile, that, for example, engineers, or I'll give you an example, like engineers for 3D printers, for example, which is very niche and very specific. You could be able to reduce costs based on that, but not as much, because it is not such a general, easy to train kind of customer service that you can do from anywhere. So analyzing the profiles and the task at hand is number one, and somebody to be able to assess and be able to say yes or no. Obviously, mixture of languages that's needed. What challenges the company has to recruit these profiles at this point, so we are aware of these challenges in order to actually try to come up with a better recruitment plan, for example, and identify the internal processes are on point for pre-implementation. So basically, for example, if I would ever have a company approaching me saying, we need to outsource, but we have no knowledge base and we're not really intended to waste time on building one, and we just want to dump this on you kind of vibe, this will be a big no for us, because this is no longer a partnership, this is something else. So I believe that it's a shake of hand. I also believe that the company that wants to externalize in order to reduce costs, they do need to have one person as a point of contact in-house for us to be able to develop together, not alone. Otherwise, you would, in my opinion, it would be a short partnership or a no partnership for this company itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Sham?
Yeah, it's really great points that you've raised, Alex. I would say one of the biggest benefits is speed. So typically an outsourcer can move at a different speed than you could do yourself in-house. And that just comes from things like signing off the job advert, figuring out where to put it, who's going to see it. So if we carry on with the example of these 3D printing engineers, and let's say in my business, I sell trainers and sneakers, then the people looking at the adverts that my business posts are probably going to be sneakers and trainer fans, and perhaps not 3D engineers. And so there's a bit around how an outsourcer can go and target a particular profile for you really quickly, scale up and scale down. They're quite good and nimble at being able to bring headcount in and out of your account fast. So that helps with seasonal moves. Of course, as much planning as you can do and provide upfront would help the outsourcer be more successful. But they're very good at moving resource around and helping you maximize your savings and where needed, drive the right cost in the right way. So I think when you need to move quickly and you want somebody that could come in and hit certain profiles for you, outsourcing is probably a good time. And I guess just picking up on something Alex was saying earlier, if it is my business to be the foremost authority on trainers and sneakers, I probably should focus on doing that and do that really well, knock it out of the park, be the number one brand in the world that could make sure that whatever it is you choose to have on your feet is why you come to us. And therefore, if you take that same idea, you can go to an outsourcer, because in theory, they would have the best customer service in the world, no matter where they are. And so you can choose where you want to play. So I always say to people when I talk to them, where do you want to play? And if you want to play in call center and customer service, great, there's ways to do that. But there's specialists out there too. And so that could be another reason to outsource.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think in my experience, we definitely went through several rounds of iterations around outsourcing at Monzo, some of them more successful than others. But my takeaway was that, first of all, you have to treat the outsourcing team like your own. You can't just hand things over and just forget about it. It just never works, because these people are managing relationships with your customers. And if they don't care and they're not bought in and they don't understand the product, it will be a disaster. And that goes for everything, for training, for access to tools, for participating potentially in team meetings, things like that. I have like a little anecdote where Monzo has great customer service and we always wanted to do the best for our customers. And at some point we decided to introduce 24/7 support. And to do that, we had a team in Las Vegas. And at some point we realized that actually Monzo is not available in the US. So people who are doing support for our customers, they just, for regulatory reasons, cannot appreciate our product. And by definition cannot provide the same level of support, even if we wanted to do the best. So I think it's very important to keep these things in mind, that actually people who are doing support, even if it's an outsourced team, they're as close to your product and customers that you can possibly make it happen. And I think, it's Alex, what you said around, you have to be really clear what you want to outsource, what kind of questions, and how exactly it's going to work. But definitely requires a lot of planning. Cool. Okay. Moving on to the next topic, productivity. So I guess there's, when you think about cost drivers, there is a volume that comes in. There's a question of chip allocation and other ways to optimize cost with outsourcing. And then finally, how quickly can you actually resolve these questions that come in? In my mind, a lot of things go into it: processes, tools, empowering your team, how they think about your product. So to ask you, in your experience, what are some of the initiatives that maybe could be quick wins, or something that you found impactful in making sure your team is more productive? Sham, you're the first one here.
So productivity is always a tricky one for somebody like me, just having worked many years ago on the phone, taking that one call after the next one, and working my way out through. I've always felt like productivity felt a little bit like whipping your workforce, and I always just felt that was a quick route to the bottom. There's only so much productivity you could get by going faster, and of course you come back to the earlier problem that we spoke about, which was around quality. And so there's less about, on average, how much should somebody do versus what's appropriate for somebody to do. And I think once you find that level, that number for your business, and it will be slightly different for everybody, protect it. Within your role as customer service manager, head of, whatever your sort of title is, protect your team and that role so that you've got that quality going. And again, it's maths, but I would focus on what can you do within the customer journey and or in your planning to make sure that you've got the right headcount at the right time. If you really think about how your call flows come in or when your emails land, and then how to match your staff to that, you can then have less wastage. And then when you have less wastage, your cost is better. And then you don't necessarily have to keep pushing on productivity. However, I'm aware that not every CFO or every business, just picking up on what Yulia is saying around across your company and getting buy-in, that you have to be able to do a little bit around productivity. So have a little think about, what are those repetitive tasks? Can you build templates in? Can you put some automation in? Another way of looking at productivity is channel hopping. So do you have people who take calls, emails, live chat, and social? How productive would you be if you were bouncing around? If somebody's just very good at email, why don't you leave them on email? Why do you need them to be on other channels? So don't worry about having hard and fast rules about forcing people to learn everything and do everything all of the time. Help play to people's strengths. Find out where they do really well, where they enjoy their time, where are they going to provide the best level of service. And I think you'll find naturally that productivity will come. And so I think tweak and eke out your productivity, understand your ceiling, protect that ceiling, and then focus on the customer journey to drive out the wastage.
Yeah, I fully agree, Sham. I think when it comes to productivity, the things that I would focus would be having a solid training plan that needs to be reevaluated a minimum every 3 months. And again, I'm speaking for startups and scale-ups because, of course, their business are changing and growing, which is nice. But the devil is on the details sometimes. And, fast-growing startups, for example, like if they don't focus on their training and the training plan, in 3 months is outdated already. So the new people that you're going to get for the 4th month will not be actually on par with the knowledge that the productivity that you're willing requires. So obviously avoiding turnover. So recruiting good is the more turnover. So it's, you will need to replace that person. The knowledge goes away. You need to retrain. Productivity goes down. CSAT goes down, and a lot of other things goes down with it. So recruiting well, being super straightforward on what type of job this will be about. If it's like seasonality companies that they actually have, I don't know, Black Fridays and whatnot. So be sure to mention on recruitment process that there are high volume peaks that you need to be ready for this. Otherwise, just filter these people out of your recruitment process because it needs to be transparent from the beginning. Obviously, strategies, quick wins, as Luba was saying, that I tend to apply when I sense a little bit of productivity lack on projects, maybe due to behavior or other aspects, but create a bonus scheme for the team where productivity is part of it. So it's always bonus schemes. They have to be achievable, not impossible, but they have to be challenging at the same time. And they can vary according to the business needs. So for high peak season, you can actually change the bonus scheme, and low peak season, you can actually be a little more flexible there. That's a quick win that we usually apply within operations. Obviously, we've spoken before about documentation and knowledge base in place. I mean, that is easy to navigate because, as I said in the beginning, when I presented myself, I started in the company as an advisor, as a person also, answering 70 calls a day, plus email, plus chat consecutive. So projects that have an unintuitive knowledge base drove obviously a higher first call resolution and a lower first call resolution and a higher average handling time, because I needed to actually pause and actually get customers on hold in order for me to find information. And also at the same time, it kind of drives down motivation of the team if you actually have super complex and not intuitive knowledge base, especially on high traffic or volumes, seasons and whatnot. And I think the last key here is the leadership. The leadership needs to be also demanding but appreciative when it comes to productivity, because for me, and productivity is as well very related to the emotional of the staff. So if the staff is not motivated to actually do the job, you need the leadership there to do one-to-one meetings, to make sure that everything is all right, to coach, to retrain, to give feedback on quality assessments, and then ensure that they are telling the team why they're not making it, or if they are making it well, so they are recognized as well. I think for productivity, there's so many variants, but I think the human aspect is super important there too.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed. I think, just one thing to add from my side, as maybe someone who's coming from a very tech-oriented company who is very keen to build our own tools as well. We had a dedicated engineering team who was focusing on how can we improve the internal tools to make sure that our staff can do things as we position the mission of the teams at the speed of thought. So like, how can you just make sure everything at the fingertips of a customer support person, which is obviously not always possible, but how can even some of the training can be taken away where it's just so obvious what you need to do. It's almost like self-service for the team within rather than turn to the customer, which can then potentially be actually made into a self-service tool as well. So I think I found it very, very impactful where we actually had a dedicated team focusing on improving processes for our employees, not just for the customers, but internally. And that actually pushed and made their job much, much easier and actually much more interesting as well, because that meant they didn't have to deal with or could resolve simple questions so much faster than before. So yeah, I think having like dedicated project teams that focus on processes and tools is super, super helpful. So actually building on that topic, so automation tools and AI, very big topics in customer support right now. I guess, what is your take on this in general and in relation to cost reduction more specifically? So Alex, you go first now.
Okay. My take is I feel like we are in a preparation phase for what's to come. And I'm just giving you my inputs from what I see day to day, speaking and checking tools and infrastructure from the clients that we have. I feel like the biggest one that is actually working and working quite well nowadays, it's related to translation tools. So especially for multilingual clients. So basically, what we've been doing a lot lately for the Nest by Concentrix and Webhelp is setting up teams in locations like I was mentioning before, best shore locations, where the language requirements are maybe just English, but they are servicing the whole Europe, okay? So instead of creating projects in each country, so Germans in Germany or expensive locations like, I don't know, maybe Spain or Lisbon, we will put a team somewhere else that they speak great English, they have a good reputation for English, they are trained on how to work and manage startup projects, and the language translation combined with AI nowadays is giving better results than what we were used to maybe 5 to 10 years ago. So that human touch, that cognitive ability to translate things in a way that is designed in levels of formality to however the client wants. So if it's a client that needs their customers to be addressed more formally, the work that is been doing on the translation, and additionally to the level of formality that the speech is created or that the translation is created, is actually good. So in those terms, I think from what I've seen on my day-to-day is where I see the biggest cost reduction. And also there's other things that I've seen in terms of AI platforms or AI solutions that they reduce accents. Accents is a big thing in customer support, especially when you're talking, especially in exclusively when you're talking about voice channels. AI tools that are able to actually pick up certain accents and kind of minimize them to the market that is actually listening to the voice, in order to possibly reduce average handling time, misunderstandings, etc., increase productivity, reduce costs. So this is from the top of my head that I can give right now. But I know that companies like Intercom and Zendesk and all of the big players in terms of actually customer relation tools, they are bringing big guns very soon in terms of transforming template databases into conversational aspects, and things are looking really promising. But I would probably be able to give my honest opinion on that when I see that with my own eyes and hands. But I think the future is promising when it comes to this for customer support, for example.
Sham?
Hey, I'll probably give you two examples. One quick one that exists today, which is email automation. Often a lot of the AI is around live chat and chat bots, and that's a bit more, it has more of the marketing spend behind it, so you'll see a lot of that being pushed everywhere. But a number of businesses that deal with email will tell you that emails are always quite tricky, and it's really quite hard to send one email and just get one back and resolve something. There's usually a follow-up. There's more than one email to solve something, and so if you could bring automation in there, and that's happening today right now, there's a handful of great suppliers out there do that right now, email automation, then that's a quick win. And if we just take some very broad industry cost per contact numbers, in order to sort of deal roughly outsourcing for an e-commerce business on email, it's about £5 a contact. And then if you look at email automation, it's closer to £1, maybe a little bit less. And so very quickly, the maths will say to you, if I can email 1,000 emails and there's a difference of £4 there, that's £4,000 straight away. So I think there's an element there that says to you very quickly, you can reduce some money. And so my asterisk there is around quality, but for now, we're not arguing with ourselves. We're assuming that you would want to automate something, and that's how you would do it. The one that I think is more interesting, more exciting, and I've written a recent article about it, which I launched today, is around the idea that AI can augment the customer service advisor and the human rather than replace them. So imagine that I've got this amazing customer service skill. I have a way about me where I can talk to anybody in any language, and I'm just great at interacting. But I'm limited to where I work and who I work for. If I had AI and I had access to every knowledge base in the world, every carrier in the world, every order management system and WMS and everything else that comes with it, and I'm talking about the information there, not the customer data there, but where's that item, that order, the information around it. And somebody came through to me and said, hey, could you help me with this item, with this problem, with this issue? Yes, I can. And that augmentation of AI and giving them that information will get you to true contact resolution. You'll be able to just solve it. But not only will you do it the first time, you'll just do it really well, because you take away the idea that you have to hire somebody and train them in everything. All you need to train them in is how to get that information out. And if the AI makes it easier for them to get it rather than them trying to ask the right question to get the information, suddenly you change the game and you can focus back on the human side of it. So one conversation at a time, I think AI can augment it. So it's not going to take your job, or at least I don't think it is, but it might make your job a little bit easier. And so for me, that's quite exciting.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of interesting use cases that hopefully we'll see coming to life in the next few years. I'll throw in one more around how AI can help understand what's going on your what customers are writing about, and in particular on calls as well, which is something we do at Cordless. But where obviously it takes time to really listen to calls or understand, on thousands of conversations what just happened, and being able to just ask questions about it saves a huge amount of time. And that can inform actually how you can reduce that contact volume, right, in a much more easy way, and also see how all of this is changing. So I'm personally very excited about all these use cases and how they will get implemented. Okay, thank you so much. We have 5 minutes left. I see that we have one question. How can you demonstrate and validate to the broader business that the wins of the customer support team positively influence overall company metrics? I guess that's the question of customer service being a cost center, right? And how do you make sure that you promote it to the rest of the business? How do you approach this? Sham.
Hey, so I've been doing this for the last 20 years, and it came out of frustration, actually. So some 20 years ago, trying to get investment into the contact center, much harder to do. Cost center, why would you put money in there when you can spend that money with sales, marketing, or somebody else that can actually give you an ROI, a return on your investment in pound terms? And here I am saying, spend a bit of money here and it will be much better. And so I think, it's easier today than it was some 20 years ago. And AI, in a way, is the great equalizer, where the cost to entry of doing it is less, especially with cloud-based systems and being able to turn things on. So there's an opportunity today within customer service to use the data that we have. The world has gone past this gut instinct and is very much around how do you make data-driven decisions. And within the contact center, you have lots of rich customer data where they came to you and gave it to you. So if you work within a contact center or a customer service team, you are sitting on a treasure trove of information. And so my thoughts on how to demonstrate that value is to share that throughout your business, whether that's through a dashboard, whether that's through sharing a tweet every Monday for the week before so that your exec can see what customers are saying, They love that kind of thing. I also had an open door policy with the contact center. So I would invite execs into the contact center once a quarter. They would come in, they would spend a day, they would speak to staff, they would put a headset on, listen to customer calls, and very quickly they could see the value of what a contact center is. It's more than just a cost. This is an area of the business that is dealing with your customers. And so immediately it starts to demonstrate the value, both figuratively and literally, by bringing them into the contact center. So use your data, open your door to your contact center, and then when you go and ask for the money, the ROI will be easy. We live in a time where every provider that you work with will demonstrate their value back to you through KPIs. And so they'll be able to say to you, if you do this, you should expect this result. You could take that information and go back into your business, into your finance department, and say, here's how much we spent, here's what the return on investment was. And by the way, here's all these wonderful customer stories that we have as well. And so we have access to so much more now that we can demonstrate this value and influence the company quite easily, I think.
Alex.
Yeah, sure. I think exactly. I'm gonna dive on the data part. We are. I consider myself as the customer support team. Usually, it's the perks of the day-to-day. Customer support teams are the front-facing image of your company, of the company, right? So they are able to do the sentiment. They sit on a lot of data, as Sham just said, and at least how I see this data being managed back to the client is transform this data into action plans. So transform this data into, and it could be internally only for the customer support team, and it could be even for processes and things inside of the client's house, right? So this is a little bit of the approach that we take as a consultancy as well when doing customer support for startups, because they are somewhat not very familiar with how customer support and things are working or should work. So this consultative side of things is taking this data and transforming them to added value to the company. So, for example, delivery company, again, and this is a real case, okay? A delivery company that we were doing data analysis, and we couldn't figure out why there was such a drop in CSATs. And we started looking into yearly information, and we found out that they didn't have enough drivers, for example. They didn't have enough riders. And we would actually, in terms of analysis and numbers, provide how many cases that could be avoided if they had X plus drivers in certain region in Germany, for example. So transforming this data into the actions is, I think, the best way of consolidation of a partnership, because it's not that we're just looking into our end, okay, let's get our numbers great and whatever to present it to the client, but we actually take these numbers and transform them into internal actions towards the clients too. So I think those are a great way of a customer support team to win trusts and to demonstrate that the partnership is effective, and it could actually change things within the company that would finally impact the final customer and loyalty and satisfaction. So
yeah,
it
makes sense.
Out of me, I think. Mm-hmm.
We're at
Sorry.
time. No, we're at time now. Thank you so much for joining. That's it, both to the speakers and to the participants. So I hope you enjoyed the webinar and found it informative. So have a lovely day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.